We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. I'm not even going to try to do an intro this week. It's 2 weeks in a row. It's just gone horribly wrong where, you know, in between recording and posting, things changed. So there was no second episode last week. People obviously would have figured that out. Put that in the text description. And who knows? Fingers crossed maybe this week, but maybe not. So I don't know. I'm not going to say anything. No promises. And things will probably change by the time we post this, because that seems to be the way things are going in 2021. This is now the new trend,
the new normal. Yeah. yes. So obligatory. I'm tired, but you know, it's a 4-day weekend with my kids this weekend, which is just so much fun. People have often said they're like, you don't seem to like your kids very much. I love my children. It's just they're a job right now. I'm not gonna really love my grandkids because they're not going to be a job, but they're a job right now, and they're all, you know, even without the COVID homeschooling mess that's going on right now, it's always still a struggle to keep them, you know, pointed in the right direction, and you know, letting them be their own person while not letting them kill themselves or commit heinous crimes against humanity. So I am having a good time with the kids. They are a constant source of stress and worry in my life. But I think my eldest is trying to get good enough at Beat Saber to like do a GDQ run. For those of you who don't know, GDQ is Games Done Quick.
Right.
It's a twice yearly, I think maybe even more than that, event where they do speed runs of games and get donations to help. It's usually cancer, I think.
Yeah.
Anyways,
charity anyway.
Charity of some sort. So he's working on that, and he's been playing Beat Saber to the point where the little strip that goes on the top of your head to keep the thing from the Oculus Quest from falling down, it has made like his hair now parts that way.
Okay.
Because he's had it in there so long.
I mean, I'm not sure that Beat Saber is a game that actually can be done as a speed run, because you're kind of tied to the timing of the songs.
They did it at the most recent GDQ.
Oh, really? Okay.
It wasn't really a speed run, but it was the runner was doing the Expert Plus.
Sure, right, yeah. All that
stuff for like 2 hours.
I mean, there are people who do the whole mixed reality setup. They get themselves like not just a green screen, but like a green room, and then they like capture the footage that the game is showing plus themselves, and then they have that all over. They put that up on YouTube, and like that's their full-time job now. So it exists.
It exists. Anyways, he's getting pretty good at it.
Cool.
So, and the other two are also playing quite a bit. So it's turned out to be a very good Christmas present that Santa brought us.
Very nice.
For those of you that still believe in such things. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/avrantpodcast. YouTube.com/avrant. Contact Rob directly. Rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom @avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. Let's talk about our listeners of the week. Become a listener of the week. You have to support this podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and leave us a PayPal donation. PayPal will take your money and give most of it to us and keep a little bit for themselves. This week we had Jeffrey, or Jeff. I don't know what you go by. Or Jay. Big J. Little J. I don't know. You could be Junior. I don't know. Anyways, Jeff did that. So thank you very much, Jeff.
Indeed. Jeffrey, however the name is said. Thank you very much for that PayPal donation. It's very much appreciated.
Whatever anybody. You could go by Ray. Like the last 3 letters. If you want to do a Star Wars thing. That'd be cool. We also have 124 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a contributing, an ongoing subscription that you do for your content creators of choice. If you choose us, they'll take as little as $1 a month from you and give most of it to us. And you can increase that amount to whatever you think is appropriate. So $12 a year to keep us in the black is what they ask for. And if you decide to do that, we would thank you right here on this podcast. So we right now have 124 patrons, and we thank you very much.
Yeah, patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If anybody would like to sign up for a voluntary subscription, automatic monthly donation. Thanks very much to our 124 patrons over there. The number's been ticking down ever so slightly. We're past the holiday season. People are like, no more giving money.
It's okay. If you can't support us financially, we completely understand. If you do something that supports us, or you think supports us, let us know what you did so we can mention you here. So, Kamran, I guess?
Yep.
Cameron? That is a very strange way to spell that name. Cameron lets SVS know that his PB2000 Pro purchase was thanks to us. George ordered a pair of SB2000 Pro subs from SVS and let them know it was because of us. And Nick Brown over at SVS sent Rob a pair of the 13 Ultra to 4000 series upgrade kits, which was the amp upgrade.
That's right.
That you can get from them on a super extended review unit loan. So, in theory, they could ask for it back.
That is true. And I would oblige. If they ever ask for them back, I will send them back.
But he hasn't installed them yet.
I haven't.
As at least. Yeah.
I haven't installed them yet, but yes, Cameron, George, thank you very much for talking us up to SVS. That has helped very much in things such as Nick Brown over at SVS being willing to send me a couple of the PB or
completely
PC,
unneeded, completely unneeded upgrade
PC 13 Ultra to 4000 series amplifier upgrade kits. He did warn that specifically on the PC, because it's the cylinder form factor and it's got the long tubes for the ports inside, 3 of them, that apparently there's like some people, depending on exactly how the ports were aligned, a part of the amplifier might like bump into one of the ports inside. So he's like, if that happens, get in touch with Ed over at SVS. He's like, there's a workaround. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know what the workaround is. I'm pretty sure the workaround is turning the amplifier upside down, because all the screw holes will still line up, and that puts the part that sticks out a little bit more to the other side. And I'm pretty sure.
Since there's no controls on the amp anyways, once you plug the thing in, you're done.
You'll never see them again. So I'm fairly confident that's what it is, but I never know. I'll see what happens. Hopefully I'll be able to update everyone on that next week.
This will answer the age-old question of what the exact volume is on Rob's SVS subs, because people have asked, because he sits so close to 2 PC13 Ultras. It's close enough that he can basically reach out and lean over to one side and touch one, and lean over to the other side and touch the other.
That's right.
Since they flank his couch or chair. I don't know what you have in there.
Couch.
Couch. And so this will be digital. He controls it all from the app. And he'll be able to tell you the exact number that he sets it out out of. Well, I guess it's probably out of 100.
Yeah,
usually
it goes from 0 to 100 on their scale.
There you go. So, I scrolled past some stuff. Kurt and Chris, we want to thank you guys because you sent in some photos for me to use on avgadgets.com with permission. So, thank you very much. And we got some notes of gratitude from listeners. We got Steve and Kurt. Kurt's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club and says we're his favorite podcast. And he's sent some photos in, which we already mentioned. He's happy with the, he's got curtains covering most of his walls. Makes it easy to hide the cables and have to paint. So if you're on YouTube, he's got dark purple curtain. This is one of those things that I think when you look at the pictures, you're like, that's a really purple room. But I think when you get in the room, you're like, it just looks dark.
Probably closer to looking black. Well, there's one image where we're seeing what the front of his room looks like when the lights at the front of the room are off and there's only one little lamp at the back. And I'm like, it looks pretty black back there. That's what, what it looks like.
I think this looks really, really dark and probably looks really good in there. The photos are probably doesn't do it justice. Right. Nathan sends a note of gratitude and asks, does my bike accident means that I've earned the spandex now? For those of you that don't remember, I have often made the claim that you buy the bike, but you earn the spandex. And I do, in fact, own some spandex now. Yes. I do. It wasn't because of that bike accident. I bought them just before Christmas. But I had been riding for enough months, and it seemed like I was going to keep going, that I felt like I had, I'd earned it. And honestly, the funky shirts that you buy, they have pockets in the back, and I thought those are ridiculous. I'll never use them. They are so handy.
Right.
When you're biking, they're like the best.
There's a reason they put them back there.
There's a reason. And we also got a note of gratitude from Steve from Australia. So that's, let me go back through them. A different Steve, I guess.
That's right.
Steve, Kurt, Nathan, and Steve all sent notes of gratitude. So thank you guys.
Indeed. I'll go back and thank Kurt and Chris for sending in those photos with written permission, saying that Tom can use them in perpetuity over at avgadgets.com. Very handy for Tom. And then Steve, Kurt, Nathan, and different Steve, thank you so much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement for keeping us going here, keeping the podcast going while everything is going on in the world. And yeah, we're happy to do it and very thankful that everybody continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right, some news here, and I accidentally clicked on something, and now your face is covering it. Okay, got it. KEF announced a new dual oppose bass driver design called Uni-Core. It is new-ish, but it's not all that exciting for me anyways. It's all about saving space. In order to do so, the dual oppose drivers share one set of magnets and then use two different voice coil sizes, one sliding over the other to get the two drivers closer together than a traditional back-to-back design. So that's actually, a smaller voice coil inside of the larger voice coil, and one controls one woofer and the other one controls the other woofer, but the magnets are all the same.
Yeah.
So very interesting. It's very different.
Yeah.
It's, essentially just gets them closer together. So you will see, I would imagine, smaller subwoofers.
That's the
from KEF coming
the goal.
up.
Yep, that's the idea.
We'll see. You remember what we said about subs? You can get loud, small, or cheap. Pick two. so either it's going to play loud and low, and have these small drivers, the small driver design, but guess what you're not going to get? That would be my guess here. So, all right, Netflix announced its plans to spend $19 billion, which is twice as much as Disney, on new content in 2021. They've promised 70 movies with at least one new movie every single week, plus new TV series and documentaries, and canceling everything that you loved on Netflix up until this point, because it's more important that they get the buzz about the new thing than it is that people get excited about the second season of the thing that they like.
It's just crazy, though. I mean, that amount of money in a single year just on...
I don't think Netflix has ever made money, have they?
They absolutely
I think
have not. They just keep racking up debt. I mean, it's insane. I don't know how you keep going like this. There are also some rumors out there about Apple potentially buying a studio this year. A lot of the rumors swirling is that it's going to be MGM. And they're like, yeah, that'll give them all the Bond movies. That'd be something they can put in their catalog.
For all your misogynistic viewing pleasure. I love me a Bond movie. Let me just say, when I was a kid, that was like a staple. We would back when VCRs, we didn't own one because they were too new. We would rent VCRs for like birthdays and holidays and stuff, and we'd rent them, and then we'd rent a bunch of Bond movies, and we'd watch the Bond movies because my dad liked them, my mom liked them, and they were, they were PG enough for the kids in the house. So I grew up on Bond movies. So I have a special place, especially the Sean Connery ones. Roger Moore got a little, but especially the Sean Connery ones. So I do love me some Bond movies. But I won't. I'm sorry, my assistant is delivering me a note right now. Let me see here.
Distraction from Tom. Live read.
There we go. I'll be done by then. Well, how far away is it? Okay, I'll be done by then. I'll make sure I'm done by 1:30. Okay. My son has an appointment. I forgot about
1:30. So. That's not very long from now.
Yeah, I know. It's okay.
Okay, going to be a very short podcast.
We're going to be a short podcast.
Very.
I did want to make one announcement too. We always talk about this podcast about printed panels, right? Yeah. We often recommend people get printed panels. Do you own any printed panels?
I do not. No.
I do not either.
Oh, okay.
So we had a listener send in some images. We talked about them on the podcast that his wife painted, right?
Yeah.
Of Boba Fett and the Stormtrooper and the Imperial Guard. So he sent us high-res versions of these so that we could, if we wanted to, use them for printed panels. So I was going to do the whole spoon flower, whatever the heck that name that website is. Anyways, I gave up and just went to GIK and ordered I ordered 3 panels. So those should be coming in soon. I don't know. I ordered them last week. So we will have direct reporting on how these things look from GIC on this podcast coming up very soon. All right. Let's get to some comments from listeners. JR took our suggestion to put his surround bag speakers on some height adjustable video secu stands. I just hate that name, video secu. It sounds porny to me. I don't know why. It's not good. He says phenomenal. He's greatly enjoying Atmos music tracks via Tidal. So thanks for the advice. So that worked out. He's got like little raceway tracks on the carpet, the same colorist carpet. And they run to underneath the couch and from the walls to underneath the rug in front of him, which is on top of his carpet. So I didn't even notice it at first. So that's pretty good. It's pretty good. So this looks like a nice little setup. Gurinder wanted to share some pics of the seating riser he made out of pallets. A single 4x8 piece of 3/4 inch plywood serves as the top platform with some leftover carpet covering just the top. The open front of the riser is hidden by his front seats and also gives him a handy place to run wires. He wishes it were a foot deeper for a little bit of a walkway, and if he had to do it over, he'd just build from scratch since it ended up taking a day to get it level and squeak free anyway. So yeah. Sometimes cutting corners causes as many problems as not cutting corners.
Cheap on materials, though.
Yeah, that is true. Chris got the Revel M8 on-wall speakers on sale for his sister, as we recommended. They sound great, and she loves them. For surrounds, he sent the Polks back and went with even cheaper acoustic audio super flat speakers. Never heard of them. They're fine. The Polks weren't any better, so they're whatever, cheaper. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah, these Revels are nice and small and white, and they kind of blend in. So, yeah, works.
Yep.
Let's get to some questions here. Dale is getting a Denon X4500H receiver. The one thing he would like to be able to do is have his video going from his DirecTV satellite box or some other video source, but have audio from a different source playing instead. Sports on in the background while listening to podcasts, for example. The audio source will typically be his Sonos Connect. How can he get the 4500H to do this?
There is a way.
I'm sure there is. I'm thinking there's probably more than one.
Not that I'm aware of. Well, I don't know.
Well,
I'm aware of one way.
What's your way? Okay.
Yeah, so in the Denon manual, they do describe this. You have to sort of dig through and know where to look, so I don't blame anybody for not knowing about it. It only works with a handful of specific inputs, namely the phono input, the CD input, and basically like the built-in radio tuner and internet radio things that are built into the AV receiver, and that's it. You can't do this separate audio source and video source with any of the other inputs. So in your case, you're going to want to use that CD input, and importantly, out of the box, I'm pretty sure one of the HDMI inputs is actually assigned to the CD input, and you have to manually change that. You have to make sure that there is no HDMI input assigned to the CD input. The CD input has to be audio only for this to work. Now, it can be stereo analog, which, of course, your Sonos Connect could output, or it could be an optical or digital coax input. It just has to be audio only. That has to be the input assigned to the CD source. And then you would start by going to the CD source. That's where you would start, and you'll basically have to use the front panel of the Denon to do this, because now that you don't have HDMI or any video assigned to the CD input, you'll only be able to see this on the front panel of the Denon. So you start by getting your CD audio source going. Your Sonos Connect is plugged into the CD input on the Denon, and then you press the option button on the remote and go to where there's a thing called Video Select under Options. So it'll be on the front panel. You'll press Options, go to Video Select, and turn Video Select on. And then you can choose any of your HDMI inputs to be your video-only source. And that'll start working without pulling in that HDMI source's audio along with it. Be video only while continuing to play what is plugged into the CD input on the back of the Denon. So that's the way they say to do it in the manual.
Okay. That makes sense. But surely there's the... I mean, I know this would be... I don't know how much less complicated this would be, but surely you can go into the audio settings and assign to the HDMI source that you're using a different audio input, right? I seem to remember being able to do that.
Yeah, like you can assign a digital audio input to that particular HDMI, but then if you wanted to switch which HDMI source you're watching,
you'd have to do it every single time.
Audio, you'd have to manually change it every time.
Right. So if you did that, you would select your video, whatever the video you were going to watch, and then you would have to go into the menus and manually change the audio assigned to that HDMI input to the Sonos input.
Yeah.
And then you get the audio from the Sonos and the video there. But if you change channels or went to a different video source, you would immediately lose. You'd have to and then you'd have to undo it afterwards.
Yeah, because when you want to go back to the HDMI video using that HDMI source's audio as well, you'd have to change it back. So that's why they recommended doing it this way. If you have one particular audio source, and it sounds like he does, this is his Sonos Connect, where that's the one where you typically want to be listening to that audio only and then be able to switch around video sources without hearing the audio that's a source associated with that video source. This is how they say to do it. So you go to that CD input first, make sure no video input is assigned to the CD source on the Denon, and then options, video select, and choose which HDMI video you want to watch.
Yeah. Manuel has a Optima UHD65 projector. I don't know why I had stumbled over that. With a 135-inch ALR screen, ambient light rejecting screen. His projector has unfortunately developed some dead pixels and has some sort of flickering issue, so he's looking to buy a replacement. As we might have guessed, he doesn't have full light controls. That led him to consider an ultra short throw model, the Optima Cinema XP2 in particular. But he has two concerns. He wants low input lag for gaming, and he wants to keep his 135-inch screen, and the P2 says it only goes up to 120. I mean, it can go up to 135, but you're just compromising the
might
video.
Start to look blurry, a little out of focus.
Yeah. So could the P2 still be a good choice, or is there another ultra short throw model that we would recommend that would be better for him? I don't think anybody's doing 135-inch ultra short throws yet. I think 120 seems to be kind of the de facto standard with that.
Like technically that Vava that we've mentioned, they say it can go up, but it's kind of blurry all the time, so because it just doesn't have that great a lens to begin with, so they probably more or less didn't care that once you blow it up, it looks a little blurry because it never looks pin sharp, especially not edge to edge. I've got to be honest with you though, Manuel, I don't think you really want to switch to an ultra short throw unless you also want to buy a new screen. Because if what you have is an ambient light rejecting screen that was appropriate for a normal throw projector, which is what your UHD65 was, that's not an appropriate choice for an ultra short throw. In fact, it'll really hurt the image.
It'll be very, very bad. If you think about it, Manuel, what your screen is designed to do is to reject light coming in from the sides and above and below. Basically, it's reflecting the light that's coming directly at it, which is the light that is coming from your projector at the back of the room. If you put an ultra short throw underneath it, it's shooting it up.
Yeah,
and that screen does not know that that's the correct light it's supposed to be. You know, it has no way of knowing that. All it knows is it's got some light coming in from the sides, and it's designed to reject that light. So you will get an image of some sort.
Won't be great. It won't be what you were hoping for. I mean, it's similar to how if you get a screen that is specifically for ultra short throw projectors, where it only reflects light that's coming up from the bottom at a very steep angle and rejects light from everywhere else, and then try to pair that with a projector that you hung on your ceiling and shot normally. Now it's just rejecting that light if it's an ultra short throw screen. So this would be a combination of you'd have to buy a new screen and you'd be getting an ultra short throw, none of which are really fantastic for gaming. Like I know that the Optima Cinema XP2 has a gaming mode on it now. It gets the lag down into the 50 to 60 millisecond range, which is better. It's better than the 130, 140 that the P1 had. But it's still not like fantastic. It's not down into the 20s or, single digits like some things can do. So, I don't know if this is the way you're going to want to come at it. I would maybe encourage you to consider, like, if you were coming from a UHD 65, then something like an Epson 3800, which is brighter. It's brighter than your UHD 65 and has very low input lag and actually does HDR quite nicely. Doesn't have the bestest black levels ever, but you're never going to get that from any projector in a non-light controlled room. So I would probably point you to that instead, because that means you don't have to buy a new screen along with it.
Okay. Dean has a Marantz SR-70009 receiver and an external Emotiva bass aux amp plus dual SVS PP2000 subs. I like how people don't even bother mentioning their speakers anymore. They're just like, here's our receiver, and I just want to let you guys know we got 2 subs, because I know you're going to say something about it.
That's right.
So he ran 12-volt triggers from his Marantz to the amps and subs, but the Marantz actually takes longer to fully power on than the amps and subs do. The result is that when the Marantz makes its second and final relay click, there's a very loud pop from all of his speakers and subs. So for the time being, he's manually turning everything on like some kind of animal.
That's right.
Is there a way to get the triggers working so this loud pop won't happen? So my Denon is connected to my subs.
Okay.
And I do have a 12... Do I have a 12? I don't think I do.
Maybe do your little date amp.
My date and amp, I think, and the subs, I just have them
You just leave
on
them on all the time.
Yeah. And I've never heard any popping from anything. So that's, I guess I'm lucky. I don't know. I wonder if just leaving the subs on and not even trying to deal with the triggers.
One solution
is one way of doing it. Because I don't get a pop. So, there you go.
There is another way to come at this, though, which is that if you go into the settings and you go to the general section, under the general section, there is a trigger out 1 and 2 part within the general settings of your Marantz SR-70009. And there you can change what it is that triggers the triggers. So by default, it's just set to main zone. So when you turn on your Marantz, it sends out its 12-volt trigger signal. And of course, that's what most people want most of the time. But you're in the situation where you actually want to delay before that 12-volt trigger gets sent out. Well, you can set the parameter of what sends out the 12-volt signal to a specific input. So one option would be, instead of just pressing the power button, because if it happens that you were already on that input, then it would send the trigger, and you want to have manual control. So you could, with something like a Harmony, you could change it so that, like on the Marantz receivers, if the Marantz is in standby and you just push any of the input buttons, that will turn on the Marantz and set it to that input. So instead of having it press the power button, the power toggle button, you use one of the input buttons, a different one than the trigger. Because what I'm getting at is you wait a little while, you put in a delay in your Harmony command, or if you're just turning things on manually, you just wait a little bit, and then you switch to the correct input, the one that you have assigned, that when I go to this input, send out the 12-volt signal. Then the Marantz is going to wait until you choose that input before it sends out the 12-volt signal. The other way is that you can assign it so that it doesn't send out the 12-volt signal until you turn on zone 2 instead of main zone. Now, you could just leave it so that nothing is actually attached to zone 2. You would have to leave zone 2 powered on, because when you turn zone 2 off, it'll send out the 12-volt trigger to turn off your subs and amplifiers. Right. But if you have nothing attached to zone 2, then you could just, turn on zone 2 when you want to send out the 12-volt trigger, and turn zone 2 off when you want to send out the 12-volt signal to turn off the sub and amps. So one of those two ways is a way that you can add this delay, because instead of that 12-volt signal being tied to whenever the main zone turns on, send out the 12-volt signal, now it'll be tied to zone 2 or a specific input you can choose.
There you go. Nick asked, what is the exact angle for the face of the SVS Prime Elevation speakers? Nick had planned to leave his living room set up with its angled ceilings and inconvenient attic space above it as just a 5.1 configuration. But since he has his dedicated theater, for watching movies, but he's tempted to expand to Atmos anyways. And if the angle is just right, he might be able to flush mount the Prime Elevation so his angled ceiling, so that they're actually ended up firing straight down. So what's that angle? Everywhere only lists the largest dimension of that angled size. So it's about like that.
It's
I'm looking at them. They're a lot like that.
So it's when I measured them, it came out with a protractor, literally. It came out to 20.3 degrees. Now it's a little bit tough to know exactly because the corners are slightly rounded. So there was some eyeballing going on there. So it's between 20 and 20.5 degrees for the smaller angle, of course. The other side will be the 70-degree angle, since we're dealing with a 90 on one side. So yeah, it's approximately 20 degrees, between 20 and 20.5, and I measured it at 20.3.
There you go. Last year, when Sony announced its new crop of home theater projectors, they included the GTZ380 model, which is an $80,000 triple laser 10,000 lumen projector. And one of the write-ups about it, the author describes how installers of the predecessor model, the GTZ270, requested that the increased light output because they're using it for things like golf and flight simulators or for private screening rooms with 250-inch or larger screens. But the author also pointed out how 10,000 lumens could also allow for 1000 nit HDR on a 100 to 120-inch screen. And they seem excited about this idea. So Nick wants to know, should anybody even want that much light output from the projector on a normal home theater size screen in a pitch black room? You can't do local dimming on a projector, right? So if you're hitting 1000 nit pics, aren't the black levels limited to the native contrast of the panels in the projector? What are our thoughts? I mean, $80,000 for a 100-inch screen seems a bit wasteful.
Not what Sony had in mind. Yeah. It really was not.
This is akin to saying, I've got these, massive PA speakers that are designed for, auditoriums, but I found them at a cheap price. Can I put them, in my living room? You're like, yeah, you can. But should you? That's the question.
I mean, also, at the price of this thing, because $80,000 is without a lens as well, and the lens isn't cheap for this thing, plus the screen that you're going to have for it. If you're up at that price, you can actually afford like one of the 98-inch flat panels that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
So if what you were going for was 100 inches and 1,000 nit peaks, this absolutely was not what Sony had in mind was the screen sizes. This is for installers who are putting it in well-heeled homes or in commercial applications. And like they say, it was mainly for simulators, flight simulators, golf simulators, and for people who are looking at 250 to 300-inch screens. And that's what this is targeting, and it totally makes sense for that. I mean, the laser light engine that they put in this thing is really impressive. It's two blue lasers. One is producing blue. The other one is producing yellow, which then gets split into green and red, and then they have a deep red laser because the yellow phosphor that gets split doesn't give you super deep red. So it's not an RGB laser, but it's a interesting format that they have there for the triple laser. But it's really impressive. It's full DCI P3 color with like really close to the claimed 10,000 lumens. On the predecessor model that claimed 5,000 lumens, once you calibrated it, it was, more like 3,500. So this is like three times brighter, genuinely so. But yeah, it's not meant for a 100 to 120-inch screen. So yeah, the question specifically about, are you limited to the panel's native contrast? When it's lit up, yes. I mean, one of the other things about this laser light engine is that it basically has global dimming. If you're looking at an overall dim image, it can dim all the lasers as it's showing it. And when it go to a full black screen, it'll turn the lasers off completely and give you a truly black screen. So dynamic contrast, as they might call it, or full-on, full-off contrast is nearly infinite. But it doesn't have local dimming. It'll light up. But I mean, the thing is, if you have something on screen that's 1,000 nits, and then the darkest black that you have on screen at that point, because it has 16,000 to 1 genuine contrast, is like 0.07, I think, of a nit. Like to your eye, when you have that 1,000 nit thing on there, that 0.07 nit thing is gonna look pretty dark. And then when the whole image as a whole dims down, it can dim the lasers and give you a very contrasty looking image. So it would look great. I don't have doubts that it would look great on a 100 to 120-inch screen, but I mean, it's just not meant to replicate a flat panel. And go get yourself a 98-inch flat panel if that's what you want.
Right. Infinite Gary says, not too often, but every once in a while, Gary can spot when the streaming video lowers its resolution. Will upgrading his wireless router fix that? Would a different streaming device than his Roku Ultra fix it? Well, we don't know where the... So the only time I really notice it is when you go like between 1080 or whatever HD and like 720.
Right.
I don't notice that. I notice it when you flip down to 480 or whatever the standard. It gets blurry. That's when you notice it. If you're getting that, and I'll be honest with you, Gary, that happens so rarely in my theater with any device. And I really don't think that I would worry about the device as much as I would worry about either your router or your service. So that's where you would look for the problems there. If you don't have a hard wire to your home theater, you should definitely consider doing that. There's no reason why you can't, because you spend money on a bunch of other stuff. So this is not even that expensive.
And you do have a Roku Ultra, because I mean, not all streaming devices even have the option of hard wiring, but a Roku Ultra does. So
yeah, I would run a wire from your router to the theater, and that should solve it. If it doesn't solve it, then it's your ISP, in which case you've got bigger problems.
Yeah. Like he says, it's not often. It's every once in a while. I mean, that kind of makes me... It's probably not your Wi-Fi router. Like within your own house, it's probably just that you have a dip in your ISP. Like if it's at prime time when lots of other people in your neighborhood are also watching and you're on cable ISP, then having a dip in the bandwidth that's being fed to your house at that particular moment, because he's not saying like it lasts forever, there's a little dip here and there. And I'm like, yeah, that happens every once in a while. And it's not that my ISP is incapable of the bandwidth or that something happened to my Wi-Fi. It's usually just that it's at peak time and everybody else in the neighborhood is watching streaming services too. Right.
Steve has used our device in the past to put together a system using a 90-inch silver ticket screen, Epson 3700 projector, HSU VTF3 Mark V subs, which will eventually get paired. I guess sub, he's only got one. And Focal Little Bird surrounds. He's stuck with his 15-year-old towers up front. They're from the brand Triangle, and he's been using a Phantom Center. I feel like I've seen Triangle speakers before. I feel like I've
heard of that brand. I've never heard any, but I've heard of the brand.
I don't think I've heard them either. But he wanted to free up floor space, so he decided to try some on-wall speakers for his fronts. He went with Golden Ear Supersat 50s. He likes them. They sound okay, but he's wondering if we think he should exchange them for something else. He's sitting about 12 feet away, and aesthetics are important. So is there something that would impress him more and maybe match better with his little birds? He wants on-wall speakers.
On-wall speakers, aesthetically pleasing, 12 feet away, so we're not really concerned about output from any of them. Pretty much anyone will be able to handle that distance, but glad that you mentioned it, because if you needed particularly efficient and loud speakers, that
How much are those Supersat 50s? How much are those
Oh, gosh, I didn't look up the price on that.
I'm only thinking, budget, because RBH would be my first go-to. First of all,
the Ultra ones?
Yeah, they'll be perfect with your little birds. They'll work just fine. The little birds are a pretty flat speaker, and the RBHs make exceedingly flat speakers. So I'd be good with RBH. I mean, looks are important, and does he want flat? Do they have to be flat?
See, I don't know whether he would rather have them flat, but the face of them is a little bit wider, because that would describe the RBH Ultras. Like front to back, they're skinny as possible, but they're the face of them is a little bit wider. Or if he would rather have them sort of more stick shaped, where the face of them is narrow but maybe there's a little bit more depth to them. Not exactly sure, but I mean, there are I've got a few different price points suggestions that could work here. First one up that I would mention are Revels M10s. Now these are on clearance, because this is like a discontinued model. The version 2 is coming out, so it's not going away entirely, but while they're on clearance, the M10 is larger. There's the M8 as well, but the M10s are on sale over at Crutchfield right now for $200 each, which for these speakers, that is sort of a reasonable price. Their normal price, I think, is way too high, but this is sort of a normal price, for a reasonable price for them. So $400 for a pair of those, but only while they're still available on clearance. Then, of course, I could talk about Ascend's HTM 200 SEs. Now, these are great sound. They're only $300 a pair, but I'm not sure I would call them super aesthetically pleasing. I mean, they're black boxes. They are little black bricks. I mean, I don't think they're ugly. They're unobtrusive. You know, when you turn the lights out, they completely disappear because they're just a flat black. But yep, that could be an option. Sound quality wise and value wise for money, I'd definitely put them way up there. Now, sticking with Ascend, if you want to spend much more money, you know, like $11.50 for a pair. Their Sierra Lunas look nicer. They're available in a bunch of different finishes, and that's going to get you up to the Raul ribbon tweeters, but that's a completely different price class, more expensive than anything we've talked about. They also, if you just want more output, have the Duo LCR, the Sierra Duo LCR, which is similar to the Luna, but just 2 woofers instead of 1. But yeah, some really nice finishes on those. Those are getting up to like close to $1,600 a pair, though, for the Duo LCRs. And then Aperion, they've got on-walls now, too, in their Novus series. So single woofer design there, you're like, what is it, $550 a pair, I think I wrote down there? And then $900 a pair if you're going for the dual woofer design for the Novus on-walls, available in both a black finish and a white finish. So yeah, that covers a whole bunch of different price ranges. All of those have quite nice sound quality. The Revels that I mentioned first, they have the least bass out of all of them. They really are like a 120 hertz and nothing below that speaker. But if what you want is the skinniest look, those fit the bill for that, and since they're on clearance, they're a reasonable price.
They're 100. Really, they only go that low? How many woofers do these things have in there? They have like four woofers in there,
but they're tiny. They're tiny woofers.
Okay, they must be really small when they look. The RBHs, I looked them up. They're 461, well, 462. Each.
Okay.
So they're
not expensive as the Sierra Lunas, but more expensive than any of the other ones.
But they are very, 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 very thin.
Yes.
I mean,
front to back, like front to back, very
front
very,
to back thin. They are crazy.
The thinnest.
Yes. All right, I gotta go back to the thing. All right, Lee. This is not Overstreet, different Lee. Lee's parents have been using an IO Gear wireless HDMI kit to send the signal from their cable box across the room to their TV. The transmitter recently died, so Lee is looking for a replacement for them. No, they do not want to move the cable box or run a long HDMI cable. The kit they had was spotty at times, so if the replacement can also be an upgrade, that would be nice. What do we suggest? I haven't even looked at HDMI.
Wireless HDMI?
Yeah, the last time I saw a wireless HDMI kit, it was like at CES,
right?
Many years ago. So go.
Yeah. So I mean, I hit up the Wirecutter because I don't know the latest on this. Now their top recommendation, and please keep in mind, Wirecutter always heavily weights value. So they bring price into it very much. So they're still recommending an IO Gear unit. I don't know if it's exactly the same as the one that you already have, but we'll have the link to the Wirecutter article where they talk about it. So their top recommendation is still an IO Gear unit. If you were just like, when IO Gear, it wasn't always the best, they have an upgraded pick, which is $230. I don't know if you want to spend that much, but it's the one they say that performed the absolute best, and that is the, I don't know how to pronounce this, Nereus, something, Nyrius, that's the brand name, and then the model is the Aries Home Plus. So yeah, that is a wireless HDMI with 2 HDMI inputs, and it's one of the very few that they say actually works through walls, which it doesn't sound like your parents really need because it sounds like it's one side of a room to another. But that's the one that the Wirecutter said, you know, performed the best, but you're paying the most for it at $230 for the transmitter receiver kit.
All right, and secondly, he asks, if he follows my tactile transducer guide over at AV Gadgets, how exactly do you wire 4 tactile transducers in series parallel? Okay, the diagram is a bit confusing to him. So the way this works, if you remember, when you wire them in series, you take one wire from your red, and it goes out to one of the transducers, and then to the other, and the wire goes from that to the other transducer, and that second transducer goes back into your AV receiver.
Right. What we'll say is take transducer number 1, go red out from your amplifier to red in of transducer number 1, then go black out from the amplifier to black in of transducer number 2, and now you have black from transducer number 1 and red from transducer number 2 are free. Those two things get wired together. That gives you a series circuit. So imagine that the signal is going out of the red of your amplifier into the red of transducer number 1, out of the black of transducer number 1 into the red of transducer number 2, and then out of the black of transducer number 2 back to the black of the amplifier. That's the series circuit.
Now, if you ever wanted justification or wanted confirmation that this stuff is confusing, Rob said it different the first time from the second time, but he's right the second time. The second thing you said was right.
Yeah.
The first time you, yeah.
Well,
so anyways,
I said red from amplifier to red of transducer 1, and black from amplifier to black of transducer 2, and that's so you're on the opposite ends. You're on the end to end, and then the transducer 1 connects to transducer 2. So that's the series.
So
and then
that's your series, and in order to do so that you've done that, right?
Do that,
and now you do the exact same thing again. Except to the same amplifier outputs. So you have 2 things in series, basically, and then 2 more things in the series, but they're both being powered by the same black and red on the back of your amp. So imagine you have 2 red wires coming out of the amplifier and 2 black wires coming out of the amplifier. You take one of those 2 loops.
red and black pairs, and those go to transducers 1 and 2. In a series circuit, and then you take the second pair of black and red wires coming out of the amplifier, and those go to transducers 3 and 4 in another series circuit. So that gives you, if each transducer is 4 ohms, which these ones are, then the series circuit created by transducers 1 and 2 together, that now gives you an 8 ohm load. You get another 8 ohm load from transducers 3 and 4 being wired in series. But then you have 2 red wires from the amplifier, 2 black wires from the amplifier. So you got 2 of these 8 ohm loads both being sent the same signal in parallel. That now divides it by 2. You get a 4 ohm load again. So you're back to the 4 ohm load of a single transducer.
And honestly, if I was any good at making graphics, I would have done a different one. Because that graphic is not great for me, but I am not the person to start making things like this, so I had to deal with what I was given, and that was it. So yes, it is a little confusing, but if you think about it, of 2 series loops, all attached together to the same amplifier output, that's all you. Yeah,
if you can figure out how to make 1 series loop, then just do it again.
Do it again. That's right. Mark, other than Odyssey Multi-Q versus Multi-Q XT, is there any significant difference between the Denon S960H and the X2700H? Is it worth paying more for the 2700H? I don't know.
So there are a few little differences. The X2700H has a pair of Zone 2 pre-outs, which the S960H does not. The S960H can reassign its surround back speaker binding posts to power a Zone 2 while continuing to power 5.5 speakers in the main zone, because 7 speakers total, but it doesn't have any Zone 2 pre-outs, and the X2700H does. So if you need Zone 2 pre-outs, there's that. The X2700H will convert analog video signals to HDMI. So if you still got a component source or a composite source and you want to convert that to HDMI output inside the receiver, the X2700H will do it. The S960H will not. So it doesn't do any video conversion. And then the power supply in the X2700H is a little bit bigger. It's heavier. It's got more wattage. That's probably the most valuable thing of all, although the watts per channel is only rated at 5 watts more per channel than the S960, but it just does have a better power supply in it. But the main reason you would get it is for that upgrade from Odyssey Multi-Q to to Multi-Q XT. That's kind of the main reason you would do it.
Yeah. And then to me, I think it's I when I was worried about getting Odyssey, I literally looked at, I would not look at a receiver that had lower than the most the XT32 one.
Than XT32. I mean, this doesn't have XT32, but XT to me is very acceptable. Regular Multi-Q all by itself, I'm like, sometimes does more harm.
It was good when it came out. Come on now.
Sometimes does more harm.
It was the best when it hit the market, and now we're like, oh, wow.
When you have just regular Multi-Q, that's where I'm like, maybe you get the app and you do curtain the response and don't try to do anything in the treble with regular Multi-Q. I'm like, yeah, I can make that argument there. Whereas XT, I'm like, just run it. I'm not even going to bother with the app, really. But yeah, that would be the main reason. And then, if for some reason you needed Zone 2 pre-outs or analog video to HDMI conversion, those would be the features.
There you go. I keep wanting to say Carmen. Cameron found our podcast thanks to a Magnolia rep at a Best Buy who recommended us. That is literally the first time we have ever heard somebody from
That is why I put it in there. I was stunned by that.
I can't believe that that they even listen to us.
I know.
Much less about us, much less recommend us.
Recommended listening to us, and then gave advice that doesn't line up with what we would say. So, win some, lose some.
So he's happy to have found us, and he wants to increase his home theater knowledge, but he's also coming to us somewhat after the fact, since construction and pre-wiring on his room has already been completed, and he's already purchased a whole bunch of gear. So he first started to appreciate better audio when he got a Vizio soundbar about 6 years ago. He upgraded that to a Sonos Beam and added a Sonos Sub and a pair of Play 1 wireless surrounds. Then got excited about Atmos and got the Sonos Arc. But he's never really heard the Atmos effect. He blames the vaulted ceiling in his living room. I do not blame that.
I wouldn't blame that. Yeah, I don't know.
You can blame that if you like. He and his wife had the basement finished in December, and that includes the new theater room. It's about 250 square feet with a small closet and a vertical bulkhead in the rear left corner and 7'4" ceilings. So no basketball players down there. The stairway is open at the far right corner. I'm sorry, at the front right corner. It isn't clear from Cameron's email whether there's a door at the top or not. He had the contractors put in Rockwell safe and sound insulation in the ceiling in the front wall, which is a party wall to his parents' basement bedroom. So his parents are living down there.
Yeah.
The room is fully carpeted with the thickest padding that was available, and he hired an AV guy who pre-wired the room for his wall-mounted 75-inch TCL 6 Series TV and a 5.2.4 speaker configuration, with the planned seating being a sectional pushed right up against the back wall and nestled into the narrower section of the back of the room created by the closet and the vertical bulkhead in the rear left corner. Cameron relied a fair bit on the advice from the AV guy, who said he should go with Revel M10 and M8 on-wall speakers and nothing less than the 8-inch in-ceiling speakers for Atmos. I do not agree with that.
Right.
Cameron had also started by looking at the Wirecutter's pick for speakers, which included Polk and RSL Speedwoofer, but then, partially because of the AV guy, and partially because of Cameron's own research, he went with Klipsch referenced Premier Towers and center up front, Revel M8 surrounds that are pre-wired on the back wall, RSL in-ceiling speakers for Atmos, and one SVS PB2000 Pro to start, with this planned to end a second later, all powered by a Denon X4500H receiver. The AV guy wasn't a fan of Polk, and Klipsch subs suck. At least that's what he said.
Yeah,
it's not.
That
also
we don't
true.
agree with that at all. Klipsch is like one of the few brand ones where I'm like, if you got a like a 12 or a 15-inch Klipsch sub from Best Buy, I mean, preferably higher than the. I mean, it's weird that their entry level is called the reference series, so preferably one series up confusing from that, the 12 or 15-inch model. I'm like, pretty good sub at a pretty good price. So yeah, we don't. The Klipsch subwoofers definitely do not across the board just suck. But whatever, that was. You got an SVS. We're definitely not going to say that you made a bad choice there. So yeah, no, perfectly good.
So it seems to have made it into Cameron's mind that all speakers, surrounds and overheads included, need to be aimed at the main seat. As mentioned, the seats are supposed to be pushed right up against the back wall to maximize floor space in the small room, and the pre-wiring was done with Revel on walls in mind, so the front left and right speaker wire terminals are up high next to his TV, and both subs are pre-wired on the front wall. So there's some things. Cameron's only real remaining question is what he should do in way of acoustic treatments and where exactly he should put them, but throughout his email he was sort of questioning all of his purchases and mainly just wanted to hear that he did good and get confirmation. So what do you have to say about the whole thing and acoustic treatments in particular? Okay, so let's look at this room here. It's all drywalled in. There's the speaker terminals are very high. Oh, did he pull them back down? No, those are the sub outputs.
The sub outputs are down at the bottom of the front wall, and then the speaker wire has been pre-wired, to go beside the TV. Because initially the AV guy was suggesting to go with the Revel M10s, which is a model that I mentioned previously on this podcast. But that's not what he ended up buying. Cameron ended up buying Klipsch towers and center, big ones. He's got those up front right now.
Big ones, yes. So. What's in the back right corner? Oh, he's got a little closet back there.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can just comment, on the speakers that you've purchased already.
Yes.
Like, you know, I don't have any problem with the Klipsch reference Premier speakers that you bought. I think out of the Klipsch lineup, I think that those are nice ones to get. Like if I had been giving advice, I would have recommended auditioning, because Klipsch has a little bit of a characteristic sound to it. If you like it, I've got no beef for it. The reference Premier series, I like them, so I've got no beef with that choice whatsoever. And if you like them, then great. Well, that's wonderful. I'm certainly got no problem with that. I wouldn't probably have paired them with Revel M8 surrounds. However, you're going to be sitting so much closer to your surrounds than you are your front speakers that in your particular setup, it's not going to be a problem. So again, I don't have a problem with it. Like what I would have done is, if you like the Klipsch fronts, Klipsch has very slim on-wall speakers, and I would have pointed you to those, because let's keep Klipsch with Klipsch, and now the timbre is going to match perfectly all around. If you're within the window to return the Revels and you'd rather get the Klipsch on-walls, that's something I might suggest to you, just because it'll keep the timbre of the sound all clear. The one thing that concerns me the most, and this is actually very changeable, is having your seat right against the back wall. You know, that's not something I would recommend doing. And I'm talking about, like, if you can get 1.5, 2 feet between the back wall and the back of your seat, which I think is doable. I mean, even with a sectional, I think it's doable. I just don't want it pushed right against that back wall. That can lead to dialogue intelligibility issues, and it doesn't give you any clearance from where your surround speakers are going to go to the back of your head. You know, it'd be nice to have some distance back there. And this is talking about moving your seat, not changing anything you've done to the construction of your room. So I'm hoping that's a possibility. Plus, 75-inch TV is a nice size TV, but looks like you're going to be sitting, like, I don't know, 13, 14 feet away from it if you're right against the back wall. And I'd rather be closer than that to a 75-inch TV. So those are some thoughts on that.
Right. I agree. The couch against the back wall will cause will probably cause issues as far as slap echoes and stuff like that. So, like Rob said, these speakers are perfectly fine. They got no problems with the speakers. If you had asked me beforehand, would I have said to get tower speakers in this room? Probably not. Sure. I probably would have told you to get bookshelves and something a little bit smaller. Subwoofer placement, having them both up front, is probably what your AV guy said to do, and your AV guy is super wrong. So let's just start with that.
Not surprisingly so. This is no shock to us whatsoever, but it's, you know, now that you've started listening to our podcast, if you are making your way back through previous episodes, you're going to hear us all the time talking about how ideally you would have the subwoofers positioned across the room from one another, which might be yet another reason to pull the seat away from the back wall. If you want to keep one sub at the front of the room, you could have another sub behind your seat on the back wall. Now, a great option there, if you don't want to see it and you want something that takes up as little floor space as possible, is you got a PB 2000 Pro. SVS has the PC 2000 Pro cylinder, and the cylinder can lie flat on its side. It doesn't have to stand up. It can be a cylinder that's lying flat on its side, nestled behind your couch, in between the back wall and your couch. You won't see it, but that'll be better positioning. And if you need to, you can use a wireless transmitter to get the subwoofer signal to the subwoofer that's at the back of your room, since it wasn't pre-wired. So that's something I might suggest.
I'd put the cylinder or whatever sub you'd want either on the back right corner, and then the box sub in the front left corner would be the way to go.
Yep. Which it has been pre-wired for that side as well, so that can be done.
So that should be fine. Then if you can't do that, then run the wire along the carpet for the left sub and bring that into the wall, into the room as far as you can. So maybe midway in that left wall, and then do the same thing on the right wall, but you'll have to use a wireless transmitter, like Rob said, for the right wall. Room treatments. So again, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I am getting some printed panels from GIK. I'll report and show you guys how they look when they come in.
Okay.
that's always going to be an option here. You definitely are going to want something behind your head.
Yes, back
how
wall in your case is going to be #1 priority, because even if you take our advice, and I hope that you do, to pull the seat somewhat away from the back wall, I don't imagine you're going to pull it, 1/3 of the room's length into the room. I don't foresee that. I foresee it being maybe 2 feet of space behind your sectional couch. So the back wall right behind you, you definitely need absorption as thick and as much as you can, reasonably speaking. Like get 4-inch panels, which are actually thicker than 4 inches. It's 4 inches of insulation in the panel, and then a 1.5-inch air gap on top of that. If you can have that going right across that back wall, cover the back wall. That's #1 priority.
And then, we always talk about first reflection points. You have your speakers, it looks like, pushed up right against the wall.
Yeah.
I'm going to sneeze. Hold
on. The surround speakers, you mean? Pushed right up against the wall on the back wall?
Yeah, the front speakers.
Oh, the front speakers as well, yeah.
Are pushed right up against the back wall. You might consider pulling them out a little bit. Sure. I don't know.
This is not final.
Ports.
He's just put it into the room. He hasn't even connected everything yet, so that's not final placement of his front speakers.
So wherever you end up putting them, you're going to want to put treat your first reflection points, which, if you don't remember how to do that, sit in your seat in the middle of the couch or right in front of the center channel or smack dab in the middle of the TV, and have your wife or kid or whatever take a mirror and go down the wall until from where you're sitting on your left or right wall, you can see the speaker in the mirror. Once you can see the speaker in the mirror, that's your first reflection point. You want to put a panel right there.
Imagine a billiard ball was shot out of the speaker to your side wall. Wherever it would hit the side wall and bank off the side wall and come to you, that's your first reflection point. Yeah.
So do that, and then if you are pulling the speakers off the wall a little bit, you can put some behind there, and then just about anywhere else you want. I would, depending on where you end up with your subs, because it doesn't look like you maybe have one corner of this room that you could put bass trapping in, and that would be the corner, if everything works out the way we're kind of asking you to do, it would be the corner that where your surround left speaker would be, and you'd be then having to deal with covering the where the speaker would actually go. So I don't really see many options for bass trapping.
I'm not super concerned about that, particularly if you do get the dual subs. That's going to help you there.
Yeah.
I mean, the one other thing, we alluded to this when talking about your setup, is I don't know if you got a door at the top of those stairs.
Yes.
That would be kind of a big deal. If you don't have a door at the top of your stairs, then your subwoofers are attempting to move air throughout your entire house. Wherever the air can move, it will move, and the subwoofers will attempt to displace the air wherever there is not a barrier preventing them from doing so. So I don't know. I mean, he's got, the stairs kind of go up and then go around a corner. Very often there is a door that's up there, but if not, see if there's a way to get a door either at the bottom of the stairs or the top of the stairs. That'll make a huge difference to the bass that you feel inside of this theater. But yeah, so main thing, #1 priority as far as the acoustic treatments is get that back wall done. That's absolutely #1 if you just want a place to start.
Yeah. And then the thing you said about having your speakers pointed kind of towards you at all the times. I just published an article today on AV Gadgets about off-axis speaker response and what it means. So, having a speaker pointed directly at you can actually, in some cases, be a bad thing. Even if they're the front, left, and right speakers, because not all speakers are designed for direct on-axis, which means that they're pointed directly at you, on-axis listening. There are a lot of times they are meant not to be listened to slightly or sometimes very much off-axis, meaning they are pointed over your shoulders. So I walk you through on that article how to test the off-axis response of your speakers, what to listen for, that sort of thing. But when it comes to surrounds and and Atmos speakers are meant to be pointed directly straight down. They are not meant to be pointed at you. I know there's the Prime Elevation speakers and everything, but those are angled because you can't get them where they're supposed to be, which is above you.
They're basically meant to go in a the not optimal position, and then the angle is there to compensate for them not being exactly where Dolby would like you to have them. You already have in-ceiling positions, which look perfectly fine, by the way. Actually,
yes, they look fine.
Particularly if your seat comes forward a little bit, then they look even better.
That's right.
Because then you can actually call them top fronts and top rears instead of front heights and top middles. Because
right.
yeah, if you're able to pull your seat forward, again, I'm talking like 2 feet, and I think it's doable. Yeah, so
then your surrounds, which are behind you, you're not going to like it, but you want to point them directly at each other.
At each other would be the ideal. I mean, you actually do have side walls, right? That'll be, again, if you're able to pull the seat forward a little bit, you have side walls that'll be a little bit, it's the corner. It'll be behind your seat. If you could actually mount the speakers on the side walls instead of the back wall. I know it's going to have a little bit of a, speaker wire hanging from the wall plate there going over to the speaker, but oh, well, maybe you cover that up with acoustic panels and fabric or something like that. Yeah, if you could have them actually on those side walls close to the back corners and firing straight across at each other. And again, because I mean, one of the reasons he was thinking of hanging on to the Revel M8s is because the bracket that they come with lets you aim them. And now you wouldn't need to. You could maybe go for the clip flat on walls, and it'll go on those side walls, firing straight across at each other.
All right. Okay, lastly, he asks, I think it's lastly, maybe it's not. Exactly how high should he mount the Revel M8 surrounds on his back wall, or side walls, as we were just saying? He's marked with tape the height of the back of his sectional and his seated ear height. He was thinking he'd have the bottoms of the speakers at ear height, and he would use the included mounts, which can swivel to aim them at the main seat. He also figured that he used the built-in angle of the RSL in-ceiling speakers to aim them right at the main seat. What are our thoughts? Again, the speaker, the overhead speaker should be pointed straight down, and these speakers should be pointed at each other. If you're wondering where you should place them as far as height, sit on your couch, or when your couch is in there and you're figuring out the height. The tweeter should have a direct line of sight as far as, how high it goes, so that it clears the back of the couch and can see everybody's ears. So the left speaker should be able to see the ear of the person sitting on the right of the couch, and the right speaker should be able to see the ear of the person who's sitting on the left of the couch.
That's right.
So that's sort of your rule of thumb there. So
now,
without being able to see your actual couch, I mean, I know you say this is the back of the couch and that's your ear height, but I don't know if that's actually true. So
I mean, honestly, with what you proposed of having the bottom of the speaker approximately at ear height, so it's ever so slightly elevated, like that'll probably be fine. Normally, we would recommend that the tweeter of the speaker is 1 to 1.5 feet higher than your head. If you do that, then you'll probably be able to clear, the person who's sitting on the right next to the surround right speaker. They won't have a speaker literally blasting straight into their ear, for one thing. It'll be higher than that. And now that the speaker is, just above their head, it'll be able to have a clear line of sight from its tweeter to the person sitting over on the left side of the couch. And that's all we're going for. It doesn't need to be higher than that, particularly when we're going to have Atmos speakers. Now, the RSL speakers, they do have the angle built into them, so there's not really much you can do about that. I mean, you're basically just going to have the ones at the back so that the angles are coming forward, and the ones at the front so that the angles are coming backward. That's pretty much all you can do there. They don't need to literally be like all angled towed in to aim at the middle seat. You just have the ones at the front are shooting back, the ones at the back are shooting front.
All right, Joe. Joe has an Epson 2150 projector, a Denon X4500H receiver, and the Panasonic UB420 Ultra HD Blu-ray player. All the various types of discs play perfectly fine, and the menus from both the Panasonic player and the Denon receiver show up just fine. But when he goes to watch Netflix using the Panasonic, he gets an error message saying this content cannot be displayed because your TV is not HDCP 2.2 compliant. He called the Epson, and they said it is, and he tried both the standard and the enhanced HDMI setting in the Denon, but no difference. Any ideas? Could it possibly be his in-wall HDMI cable and HDMI wall plates? They're from Monoprice. My first guess was going to be a cable, but the fact that it should. I mean, if it's somehow not making the handshake, and I don't know why.
Yeah, one problem is that Epson was wrong. The 2150 is a 1080p projector. It's a 1080p projector that it doesn't do any wobble K or accept a 4K signal at all. It does not have HDCP 2.2. It has HDCP 1.4 because it is a 1080p projector. So unfortunately, Epson gave you the wrong information on that for your specific model number, the 2150. So I would believe that in all likelihood, inside your Panasonic, you have the resolution set to auto. And if you have it set to auto, then it's going to try to send out a 4K signal. And what's going to happen is it first sees your Denon X4500H in the signal chain. And the X4500H says, yeah, I can take a 4K signal. But then it tries to pass it to your 1080p Epson projector, and that's when HDMI goes, oh, there's a problem here. You know, the first device said you can take 4K, so my auto setting is going to try and send out 4K, but then the device at the end of the chain says it can't do it. So the solution that should, fingers crossed, should work is to manually set the resolution output of your Panasonic UB420 to 1080p, because that's what your projector can handle, and when you do that, it should, fingers crossed, set itself so that it, you know, like it only puts out 1080p. That should work. The auto setting could give you this error. So I mean that's all you can do really is make sure that the manual resolution output is set to 1080p of that UB420. It should work. It's supposed to.
Dennis has some Rant's SR6014 receiver and a 7.2.4 speaker configuration. He's using an older Yamaha RXV665 receiver just as an amplifier to power his 4 overhead speakers. He's noticed that when he's using Atmos or DTS-X, his surround back speakers are fully disabled, and he ends up with only 5.2.4. How does he get his surround back speakers functioning? Are you using a Xbox?
Well, there's one that's although if it's an actual Atmos or DTS-X signal,
it should work, right?
And I mean, he's saying it's his receiver is reporting that the surround back speakers are deactivated, so it's not just that it shows them as lit up, but he put his ear there and there's no sound coming out of them. That might be a source issue. This is like, no, it's showing they're not lit up anymore. It's only lighting up 5.2.4. So I'm guessing at this, Dennis. I'm making an educated guess on this. I think that in your Marantz, your SR6014, you must have the amplifier assign set to the default. Out of the box, the default is 9.1 in the main zone, plus the ability to send a signal optionally to zone 2. That's the default out of the box. And if you didn't change that default amplifier assign to specifically say, I have an 11.1 channel amplifier assign, then this is what will happen. Because it will prioritize the 4 overheads over the surround backs if you leave it at its default, the way it came out of the box. So I certainly can't blame anybody for that, but I like, to me, that's the most likely scenario because it is the default, and this is what happens if you leave it that way, but have 11 speakers connected. So what I would actually recommend to you most highly is use the setup wizard.
Right.
If you go into the settings of the Marantz SR6014 and go right down to the last option, that'll let you start the setup wizard and actually follow. The wizard is actually good. On the Denon and the Marantzes, the setup wizard is actually good, which I don't blame anybody for not following it, because anytime you used one of those setup things in the past, they were terrible. But for the past several years, the Denon and Marantz ones have actually been solid and do it right. So that's what I would recommend, because that'll get you to the right place. But if you just want to switch one setting or just quickly check a setting, if you go into the settings and the speakers and the manual setup for the speakers, check your amplifier assign, and it has to say 11.1 in there.
All right, Steve from Brisbane, Australia. My Australian accent is just atrocious.
That did not sound Australian at all.
No, it's real bad. After living there for a long time, it's still real bad. Steve has an irregularly shaped room. It's sort of trapezoidal. overall, with a partial wall at the front that hides the main entrance, an open hallway that goes along the other side of the right wall, is a slightly elevated dining area behind the seats, an open doorway at the back. It's fully carpeted but not otherwise treated, and the ceiling is sloped, lower on the left, higher on the right. This is a very cool room.
It's cool looking. It is not an enclosed rectangle.
It is not an enclosed rectangle in any way, shape, or form. He's got 3 speakers. There's the front 3 speakers. It looks like he's got two subwoofers up front, and then 2 bookshelf speakers on these industrial-looking stands, flanking his couch, sorta, and facing angled in. So his couch is pushed up against the right wall. And the couch is the traditional Australian, European, very low slung couch, which is why when I reviewed some Australian speakers, I was like, the tweeters are way too low.
Right.
I mean, they're like firing in my knees, and this is why. So anyways, it's a very strange house, but it's, room shape, but it's also very cool. It's a very cool looking space. So at the moment, he has a 5.1 setup with all monitor audio RX speakers, one SVS SB2000 sub, and all powered by NAD. T758 version 3 receiver with rack room correction. He got $1,000. He has $1,000 Australian budget and is trying to figure out the best way to spend it. He took measurements with Room EQ Wizard. He likes to apply a 6 dB bass boost as compared to the default target curve, and his measurements reflect that. So these are with DRAC applied and the manual 6 dB bass boost. So got a relatively flattish looking area.
This is only 1/24th octave smoothing, so we're seeing most of the ripples there without the complete overblown ripples if you have no smoothing whatsoever. So just for that piece of info. And we've just got the front, left, center, right, and then the subwoofer. Yeah. So
here's the sub.
Frequency response that we're looking at first if you're following along on YouTube. So yeah, relatively flat response because the scale on these is, it's only going from 50 to 85 or 50 to 90, I guess, is what we've got on here. About 72
so we're around
dB nominal.
250, between 200 and 300. He's got a couple of big suckouts.
Right, yeah. Between 300. I mean, overall, it's in the 100 to 400 hertz range that we're seeing the most variance. I mean, below that, there's a boost because he manually put that in there. And above that, it's really good response. I mean,
it doesn't look bad at all.
Really
honestly.
within, plus minus 3 dB. So it's all between 100 and 400 hertz that we're seeing anything that could be a little further improved. And then the subwoofer, is rather boosted and is maybe got a little bit of ripple, between 60 and 80 hertz there, but really nothing that looks worrisome in the subwoofer as far as frequency response. Did some waterfall graphs in here too. Now, I mean, one of the things is his speakers seem to have an intentional high frequency roll off, like above.
Yeah, you can see that pretty clearly.
13 kilohertz. All of them just fall off a cliff above 13 kilohertz. So we're seeing that in the waterfall graphs too. But here, looking at the decay times, these are coming out to 400 milliseconds. I mean, really not seeing any troublesome trend there whatsoever. Again, it's only between the 100 and 400 hertz range that there's any sort of unevenness. I mean, getting into the deep bass, of course, there is, as we would expect with a single subwoofer. Not surprising whatsoever with an added manual bass boost. But yeah, that's what we're seeing in the measurements that he has provided.
So based on those measurements, how do they look overall, and what do we think would provide the biggest benefit in the way of acoustic treatments? If he does a clap test, he does hear a bit of ringing. With nothing on your walls whatsoever, it's not surprising that you're hearing a little bit of ringing in this room.
And an angled ceiling that isn't treated either. Yeah.
Right. So his left wall is almost all looks like glass doors, is what I would guess. They're probably those accordion. Maybe not. Maybe they're sliding glass doors, or it could be the accordion type that opens up to the porch. Is very common in Australia. I would highly recommend you just put room treatments just literally anywhere.
Kind of anywhere you can. I mean, as we pointed out. So I mean, as we alluded to when talking about your measurements, in an overall sense, not seeing too much that's troubling us at all in there. It's pretty much all in that 100 to 400 hertz range, which is definitely where normal absorption panels, a little bit thicker would be nicer. If you could do 4-inch absorption, that would be butter. That would do it. And if you did 4-inch absorption panels, kind of anywhere you can put it, including maybe you can actually put it in the slats of your ceiling. I don't know if that's an option, but if you did, it would get rid of any of that clap. You know, when you do the clap test and you've got a little bit of ringing, it would get rid of any of that. One other thing is that you might actually just want to put like 2-inch panels, maybe printed panels so they look nice, in the hallway in that, because you're almost certainly getting some actual reverberation in the bare hallway in that, because that part isn't carpeted. It doesn't have a rug on it. It's the hard surface in the hallway. You've got these flat, hard, parallel walls just running against each other, and that's all open to your theater. So you're going to hear some of that reverberation in your theater too. So treating inside your hallway, even though obviously it's not going to be like a direct reflection point of any of your speakers, not a bad idea in here. But yeah, 4-inch panels anywhere that you can within the theater area, and then some 2-inch panels in the hallway. That's what I would suggest to you.
Yeah, the ceiling is basically all the walls except for the front one, I believe, are white.
Yeah.
The front one's like a dark gray where the TV is mounted to that. I said he's had 2 subwoofers up front, but I guess he doesn't.
No, there's one in the front left corner. Front
left corner, and that other thing must be a cabinet. It's just hard to see.
Yeah.
But the walls and the ceilings are all white. The ceiling has got joists, like exposed joists in it, and there's no reason you couldn't just, get panels and put them up in between those joists, just the whole way.
Because, I mean, you can match the color. You can have that exact same white color. Yeah. I mean, it'll mean that the depth of the bays visually looks less because you're going to decrease them by 4 or 5 inches. But visually, it wouldn't really affect the look of this room at all. It doesn't affect your floor space or anything like that when it's on your ceiling, and it would help. So, yeah, that's a prime place to maybe put them.
So he asks, if he gets a second sub, where should he put it? And would he keep his existing sub in the front left corner as it is now? Since your room is not a rectangle, there's no way to really predict where or how it was, where you should put it. So you should put it wherever you want, and then use Rob's 12-step measurement plan. If it were me, I would keep your sub exactly where it is. It's probably fine. And I would put the second sub directly behind my couch. That's what I would do. Okay. Just because I think that it would be easiest to do and visually would be the least intrusive thing to do. Because the couch is pushed against the wall anyways. Right. So you just shove it right there next to your, in front of your surround, your right surround speaker, which, by the way, you could angle those a little bit more towards each other and less firing into the room, as we talked about with our last
they're kind of shooting at the front wall right now, more than anything else. I mean, the only room mode that we can predict in this oddly shaped room is the one that goes directly between your left wall and right wall, because those are actually flat parallel walls, and there will be a room mode going between your left wall and your right wall. So, I mean, if you had a sub on your left wall and a sub on your right wall, that could address that one predictable mode that we have. I was actually thinking that it wouldn't be terrible to, essentially use the subwoofers as the stands for your surround speakers if they were tall enough.
Sure.
Like where your surround speakers are on that elevated part that goes to your dining room, having the 2 subwoofers right there, which would be right behind your couch, and one on the left wall, one on the right wall, right below your surround speakers, that wouldn't be the worst placement. That'd be okay. Yeah. But if you simply don't want to do that, then leaving the sub where you have it right now, and I mean, as I say in my 12-step guide, you try to get it as across the room from the first one as you can. So where your Christmas tree in the photos is right now, you could maybe put a subwoofer back there. You're not going to be able to predict mathematically what's going to happen with that, but you can use my 12-step guide to sort that out.
Yeah. I have to scroll past all these measurements. So should he get one pair of SVS Prime Elevation speakers in white and mount them high on his side walls as top middles for Atmos? His NAD receiver can process 4 overheads, but will require an additional external amp since it has 7 amps built in. Would it be worth it along with another pair of Prime Elevations to get 5.2.4? So he's currently got a 5.1 setup. So if he got 2 Prime Elevation speakers, he could power those if he just got the top middles. But if he wanted to go to the 5.2.4, he would need 2 additional amps, which is exactly what happened to me.
Right.
I would not do top middles if I were you. I mean, I would
full stop not do Atmos in this room. Like, not that way. You can do the virtual Atmos, but I wouldn't have Atmos speakers in this room. I gotta say it.
I don't know that I totally agree with that.
No? That's
I mean,
my inclination.
the ceiling is so high on the right side, which I guess if you're going to do Atmos speakers, I would do top fronts, top rears. You can make them all elevation speakers, but the left ones would be on the right near the joist there, or somewhere above that window, and the right ones would be across from it, so it'd be down the wall. It would not be way up at the ceiling.
Like the speakers themselves would be at the same height. So you're limited by the height on the left-hand side of your room because that's the lower side.
I'm willing to believe that he is uninterested in doing that. So
really? I think visually, you think he wants to have them both as high as they can be?
I think that's probably that would probably be the case. If not, then if you're okay with that, that's the way I would do it. I would do them as top fronts, top rears, put them in front of the couch and behind the couch.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. But I mean, you actually think he's really gonna get like a worthwhile enhancement to his overall sound by doing Atmos in this room?
I don't think he's going to get an overall. You know how I think about Atmos in general. I'm saying this, if he really wants to do Atmos, this is how I would do it.
Right. Like I would. Okay. Like, number one, I would take your $1,000 budget, get a second subwoofer and some acoustic treatments, and not worry about Atmos for a while because
Atmos would be a distant
distant
decision. I mean, I would fill this place up with insulation before I would ever think about doing Atmos.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do Atmos, that's how I would do it.
Agreed.
But you're not going to do Atmos before you get the second sub.
Because I mean, with your $1,000 budget, you're not doing
acoustic treatments, then sub.
Right.
I would not do it in the opposite order. I would not get the sub first.
Yeah, I mean, with the budget that you have on hand right now, you're not going to do all three of those things. There's no, in Australian dollars, there's no way you're affording all three of those things on the budget you have right now. So yeah, priority treatments, second sub, and distant third. Wait and save up. But once you got money burning a hole in your pocket at some point in the future, feel free to add some 4 overhead speakers. But right now, I wouldn't even worry about it.
Okay, there's no way we're doing Bertrand right now. It's not happening.
Right.
That's too many questions.
I mean, here's the thing. You got to go, like, basically now, right? So
No, I'm okay. I don't have to leave right this second. Let's do one more. Let's do Nathan.
Okay. I mean, I was thinking I'll carry on for a bit afterward. And
we're almost at the bottom of this thing.
No, but it was going to be such a short podcast.
So what? It's okay.
Okay, all right.
No one's going to die with a short podcast. Okay. We're hopefully putting out a second one this week.
That's true.
So it's not short.
That's true. Okay.
Okay, we're trying again to do a second podcast this week. So I don't want to hear it from you. All right, Nathan. It seems like Nathan's friend is coming around to the idea of not using the built-in speakers of his Vava UST projector. Why on God's green earth would anybody use a built-in?
Because they exist.
But he still has constraints. The speakers have to be white. That's fine. Those M8s are white, the Revels, and they have to go below the screen, which means they'll be lower than ideal, tilted upward to aim at the seats. The M8s have the mount that tilts, right? Am I solving this already? He already bought the Yamaha TSR-700 from Costco, which is a relabeled RX V6A, and the clearance prices and white finish on the KEF LS50s have caught his eye. Any concerns about driving the LS50s with the Yamaha receiver? Any speakers in a white finish we think you should consider? They'll be paired with a white SVS SB2000 Pro sub. I mean, I have no problems matching the KEF LS50s with this. I mean, I don't know how far away he's sitting, but the Revel M8s work. The KEFs would be fine. I'm sure there's other white models out there I can come up with. Doesn't SVS speakers come in white as well? I feel like they do.
The Prime series is available in white, SVS Prime series, and that was a consideration he mentioned. One that he didn't mention is Aperion. Aperion's Novus speakers are available in a white finish, and they have a built-in upward rake to them. So he was talking about they're going to need to be tilted upward a little bit. That's already built into the Novus speaker, so that might check a lot of boxes. White finish, already built-in rake. Yeah, so let's say, I mean, if he likes the LS50s and can afford them, because I mean, this went from like doing some crazy like compensating so that you could get the center speaker to feed into the Vava and use the Vava as a center channel. Like that's how this whole thingy sort of began. I mean, to go from that to like a pair of LS50s, number one, they would sound way, way better, but like the price is considerably different from where we began, even when they're on clearance, the original LS50s, now that the metas are out. But if you can afford the LS50s, they would be a fantastic choice because they have that very, very even dispersion in all directions with that concentric woofer tweeter design of theirs. So that would be a really good choice as long as the price is good. If the price has to be lower, yeah, I'd consider the AVRant Novus. If it needs to be even smaller than that, then yeah, the Revel M8s. And if you want something that's akin to the Novus speakers but just looks a bit different, then SVS Prime speakers are available in white too.
There you go. All right, who we have left? I know we have...
Okay, so we mentioned Bertrand, because we skipped over his. So we got Brian Z, who's back with his triangle room and the circular windows that you were wondering about. He answers how all that came about. Bob in the Philippines is back with another question about his OLED. And Ralph M, who's got an LG question as well. So there you go. That's
not that many. You see what I'm talking about? You see people that I got to deal with here?
It's because two of them are multi-part questions. So
that's their own fault. That's not my fault. All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Jeffrey for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, as well as our 124 patrons over at patreon.com. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to our patrons.
Yes, indeed, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for that PayPal donation, and thanks so much to our 124 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast for anyone who would like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation.
We want to thank Kamran and George for talking us up to SVS. We want to thank SVS for sending Rob some amps. And we want to thank Kurt and Chris for sending me photos, and Steve, Kurt, Nathan, and a different Steve for the notes of gratitude. So thank you to all of you.
Indeed. Kamran and George, thanks for talking us up to SVS. It helps. All the people who have talked us up over there has resulted in me being sent some amplifiers, which was very nice. So huge thank you to SVS for doing that. Kurt and Chris, thanks for giving Tom permission to post your photos on AV Gadgets if he wants to. And then Steve, Kurt, Nathan, and different Steve, thank you very much for the notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going. We very much appreciate that encouragement, and thank you so much for everyone for continuing to listen and sending in your questions.
And if you want your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is email us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.